Hello and welcome to Unit 3, Episode 5 of Fisher's Class Notes. Today we're going to be talking about the events that pushed the 13 colonies to join together and declare independence from Great Britain. These are terms from Unit 3, so you should take your Unit 3 vocabulary out. Levy, repeal, boycott, new group of protesters, the Sons of Liberty, mostly in Boston. Declaratory Act, Townshend Act, and Tolerable Acts, those are all from Parliament. The Continental Congress, these were delegates from the 13 colonies working together. First Battle, Lexington and Concord, and two important documents, Common Sense and the Declaration of Independence. By the end of this episode, you should understand four things. One, the 13 colonies didn't get along. We've talked about that. Well, because they didn't get along and they didn't really trust each other, they didn't really work well together unless there was an outside force. Great Britain. Number two, Great Britain's the most powerful country in the world. Nobody's trying to pick a fight with them. In fact, they were pretty scared to fight with Great Britain, the biggest military in the world. Great Britain, knew that they were the biggest military in the world, and so they thought, hey, we'll just slap them around a little bit, show a little bit of military force, the colonists will back down. Actually, they were wrong about that. Number four, you'll understand that the little bit of force actually further united the colonies together. Remember, there's a difference between external and internal taxes. This is where all this started. Colonists did not send a delegate or representative back to Great Britain, the mother country, and so they felt like Great Britain was not allowed to internally tax, an internal duty on the colonies. Each of the colonies had their own General Assembly. They were the ones who would do those internal taxes on the people living in the colonies. For example, a sales tax. When you go buy something, you pay a tax. That's an internal tax. They thought Great Britain, the mother country, had every right to externally tax them. An external tax or duty, that's, a customs duty, shipping goods in and out of the colonies. They thought they had every right to control trade as the mother country, but with no delegate from the colonies in Parliament, they couldn't do internal duties. So, we talked about how the Stamp Act was boycotted because it was an internal tax. Mostly, they protested by boycotting. They were very successful, and the Stamp Act was repealed in 1766. But you get these two groups of people. You've got the Loyalists. They heart Great Britain. They want to stay loyal to Great Britain. And they believe in Parliament or King George III. They're looking for them. So even when the Loyalists felt like their rights were being violated, they're going to beg Parliament or King George III to help them out. Now you get a growing number of patriots. These are people who want or think maybe the colonies should be independent, be their own country. And that's where you get the Continental Congress. So we've talked a lot about boycotting, but we've got this group in Boston, the Sons of Liberty. They're a group of protesters. Some of their stuff was peaceful, marching, sending letters, things like that. But they also did some pretty violent stuff. For example, they destroyed the stamp collector's warehouse right on the harbor, and they actually went to his house and threw rocks through his window. He quit. I certainly would too. And then they went to the lieutenant governor's house and completely destroyed his house, kind of like what the regulators did to Edmund Fanning's house, but this is the lieutenant governor. Okay, so Parliament responds. As we know, they've repealed the Stamp Act, but they also pass the Declaratory Act, which basically says, we are Parliament, we are the mother country, you belong to us, colonists, we can do whatever we want. So it's a way to kind of save face. But they're still poor, they still need money because the French and Indian War had been so expensive. So they decide, fine, you colonists are all touchy about internal taxes, we'll focus just on external taxes, raising customs duties to make money. These are the Townshend Acts of 1767. They are customs duties on things that they import to the 13 colonies. For example, glass, tea, paint, things like that. However, the colonists have a problem with this too because these are all things that they're not allowed to make, and so they feel like, hey, Great Britain, how can you tax us on things that you won't let us make? You make us buy from you, and now you're going to tax, you're still taking away our freedom. So here's a good quote. Please write it down and pause the video and see if you can write down what your thoughts are on it. That Great Britain may lay duties on the articles which she prohibits us to manufacture, and the tragedy of American liberty is finished. So basically, John Dickinson, who happens to be a a loyalist from Pennsylvania, letters from a farmer in Pennsylvania. He's basically saying, you're still limiting our freedom because you are making us buy things from you. You won't let us make them ourselves. We have to buy them from you, and then it's a tax on those items we can't make, so you're still taking away our freedom. Okay, in Boston, things get even more heated. Samuel Adams, one of the Sons of Liberty, leader of the Sons of Liberty, yes, he is also the first cousin of John Adams, who eventually became the second president. He wrote a circular letter. That's a letter specifically meant not just to one person, but to be sent around to different people, circulated, that urged the colonies to protest. Now, this is actually, Parliament's getting frustrated because they're seeing that Bostonians, the Sons of Liberty, Samuel Adams, are trying to purposely organize all the colonies against them. So they decide to take action. Parliament told Massachusetts governor to get rid of the General Assembly, the elected body there. So they dissolved the General Assembly and told the commander of the British forces in the Americas, who happened to be stationed in New York, basically prepare to fight. Organize your men and prepare to march on Boston. So Bostonians, of course, feel attacked. Bunch of street fights happen between these soldiers and the colonists. Boston Massacre, 5 people die. Basically, it's a snowball fight gone crazy. 5 citizens are shot. Parliament does repeal the Townshend Acts, but they keep one, the Tea Act. They keep it because they think, all right, this is going to help everyone. We've got the East India Tea Company. They're going bankrupt, and so we will allow the East India Tea Company to not pay customs duties. This actually helps the Americans because the tea will be super cheap. Then it'll save the East India Company. The colonists will be happy. They can't complain. We're making tea cheaper, and they're going to stop smuggling, meaning illegally trading with other countries. Well, no, they get angry. The colonists are really annoyed by this because they think they're giving the East India Company a monopoly, meaning they don't have freedom of choice of who to buy to buy from. So they feel like, again, their rights are being violated. They boycott tea all over. Now, tea at the time was like the biggest drink. Everybody drank tea. Nobody really drank water at the time. And they have the Boston Tea Party, which destroyed the tea in the harbor. So Parliament decides they're going to punish Boston. They feel like everything is really being done in Boston. The Sons of Liberty also tarred and feathered tea merchants. I mean, this is horrible. This is definitely torture against citizens. They literally pour boiling tar, stuff they used to tar roofs with, but make roads with. Boiling tar that sticks to your bare skin and then put feathers all over you. I mean, it's torture. It's very painful. So we get Prime Minister Lord North decides we're going to punish Boston. So he says this: the Americans have tarred and feathered your subjects, plundered your merchants, burnt your ships, denied all obedience to your laws. We must risk something, or all is over. Pause and see if you think what he means. So Prime Minister Lord North is saying, look at all the things they've done. They're stealing from us. They're hurting our citizens and burning our ships. They're not being obedient. We have to do something. We have to punish them. We must risk something, or we might as well just give up and admit that they're in control now. So they pass in 1774 the Intolerable Acts. The Port Act, which closes the Boston Harbor so they can't get any goods shipped. The Quartering Act, they have to house British soldiers. The Justice Act, trials of soldiers could be sent back to England, which you might think, oh, well, that's not a big deal. Well, of course, the propaganda, like calling the Boston Massacre, the propaganda called this the Murder Act, meaning that these soldiers are going to come murder our wives and our young children, and then they get to run home to Great Britain and not really be tried. Well, some good propaganda there to get the other colonists mad. And the Massachusetts Governing Act. This dismantled the General Assembly and made a military commander the new governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony. So you can imagine how frustrated the colonists were. Continental Congress meets in 1774. They're still trying to plead with the king. They basically say Parliament are the ones that are out of control, so they wrote a letter to King George III saying, please help us, give us our rights back. They also decide in Boston, let's start getting organizing some people to fight, some militia, some citizen soldiers, and let's also start storing weapons. So colonists are uniting together. 12 colonies come for the first Continental Congress. Georgia, they didn't care, they didn't come. Okay, so we get our first battle, Lexington and Concord in 1775. The colonists gathered, as I said, they had begun to store arms, train people and militia, and they were hiding them in a place called Concord. So the British Army decides to confiscate these materials, these weapons, and show a little military force. Remind the colonists, we're Great Britain, we're the most powerful military force in the entire country, you're going to listen to us. They sneak into, I say sneak because they did this at night, into Concord because they're trying to destroy. Well, destroy the stockpiled weapons. Well, on the way, this is where you get the famous ride, the midnight ride of Paul Revere. Poor William Dawes, he was also there, but nobody remembers him. You're going to be reading this in language arts. I'm sure Miss Sutton will remind you that it wasn't just Paul Revere. Poor William Dawes as well did this. They were riding their horses and warning everyone, the British are coming, the British are coming. Well, they're not going to be yelling it. They were trying to be sneaky about it, so really it would be more like, knock, 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 the British are coming, hurry. So the British, as they're marching, they start to hear church bells before they even get to Lexington on their way to Concord. And it's because the citizens had gathered, and you get some militiamen. They enter Lexington at 4 a.m. Some fighting starts. 8 Americans are killed, but they retreat. Now, they're not running away, but they're realizing, hey, we can't win this fight. So they start basically running and hiding and shooting some more, running into houses, shooting from the windows, running behind bushes, what have you. The British march on to Concord, where the arms and munitions are stored. 200 British soldiers die, only 95 militiamen die. So it's, more people are fighting. You get another fight, June 1775, Bunker Hill. It actually was Breed's Hill, but they called it Bunker Hill, which is the next door hill. This is over the Boston Harbor, and they decide that this is basically a really good vantage point into Boston, and so both the militiamen of the Massachusetts Bay Colony want it as the best sort of ground to hold, and the British Army wants it, and so they fight over the hill. 1,000 British soldiers died. Now, they only had 2,000, so that's 1 out of every 2 die, and only 400 militia die. Well, that's a lot of people to die, but it shows that the British, this is not going to be an easy fight for the British. British did win the battle. They do get the hill, but with heavy loss. As I said, 1 out of every 2 people. And the colonists don't run scared, as the British thought they would. Instead, they unite. So more loyalists throughout the colonies decide to become patriots. A very famous document, Common Sense, written in January 1776. Now they start to attack not just Great Britain being in charge, but why should we even have a king in the first place? Here's a great quote. Please pause the video after I read it and write down your thoughts. As the exalting one man so greatly above the rest cannot be justified on the equal rights of nature. For all men being originally equals, no one by birth could have a right to set up his own family in perpetual or continuing preference to all others forever. So essentially, Thomas Paine is attacking the idea of why should we even have kings? How can one family be better than everybody else for all time, perpetually meaning their sons and their sons and their sons and go on and on and on? That defies the laws of nature because we're all born equal. So you're getting this idea of, we don't need kings, we're all born equal. So we get the Second Continental Congress. They organize the Continental Army, which we'll be talking about in episode 6. And they appoint George Washington to command the army. King George III decides that, he proclaims that this is a rebellion and declares that all ships are no longer protected by Great Britain, meaning that a colonial ship sending stuff, if somebody attacks them, Great Britain's going to say, whatever, fine, we don't care if you steal their stuff. So this is obviously basically says that anybody can attack the Americas, and this all leads to the Declaration of Independence, July 1776, was adopted. It's actually finished written. It was written on July 2nd, but it wasn't formally adopted until July 4th, and that's why that is the birthday of our country. All right, thanks for watching Fisher's Class Notes.